Nick Hume is a businessman who is always trying to do the right thing despite the odds. He lives with his wife Helen and two sons Brendan and Lucas, who are always bickering but still love each other. All in all, the Humes are a loving and caring family. After visiting one of Brendan's hockey matches, Nick and his son are heading back home alone as Helen and Lucas were not able to make it. Brendan breaks the news that he is thinking about going to college in Canada to pursue professional hockey, and while Nick would miss having his son around, he is still supportive of his plans. As they drive, Nick notices two cars driving past him with no headlights but ignores them. He is looking for the expressway when the car suddenly runs out of gas, forcing him to find a nearby gas station. Brendan heads inside the store to get some snacks, while Nick fills up the car. Suddenly the two same cars pull up and masked men rush the store demanding cash. The cashier gets shot trying to go for a gun, leaving Brendan frozen to the spot in shock. Nick hears the gunshot but gets hit by a car trying to rush into the store. One robber then pulls a machete and while his partner eggs him on, he suddenly slashes Brendan's throat to Nick's horror. The robbers then run out of the store, leaving the killer behind. As he tries to run, Nick tackles him to the ground and rips off his mask revealing his face. The killer manages to escape, but ends up getting hit by a car in the middle of the road. Nick rushes to Brendan who is losing blood quickly, screaming for anyone to help him. Nick manages to make it to the hospital and the doctors take Brendan away to surgery. As a nurse tries to calm Nick down, Helen and Lucas get to the hospital. Hearing the news about their son's death, they break down in tears. Nick is brought to a police lineup to pick out the killer and immediately notices the killer, Joe Darley, just a kid. The family bury Brendan soon after, and struggle to cope without a son, and Lucas without his brother. That night Lucas goes to his brother's room and breaks down in tears looking at their picture. Nick meets with his lawyer, only to hear that they are planning to cut a deal with Joe. Since they don't have the murder weapon, no eyewitnesses and unfortunately the gas station had no cameras. Nick wants to send him away for life, but learns that if they do go to trial, Joe might walk free. They also reveal that Brendan's death was a gang initiation killing, making Nick furious that his son's life was worth so little. At Joe's trial, Nick looks over to Joe, who begins to mock him, flipping a switch inside of Nick. To the shock of everyone, Nick takes back his testimony, stating that it was dark and he could not make out the attackers, to the delight of Joe. After court, Nick sits in his car and watches as Joe's friends pick him up, treating him like he just won the lottery. Nick begins to follow their cars, ending up on the rough side of town. Nick returns home and heads to his shed, trying to find some sort of weapon to arm himself with. Lucas comes in to talk with him about Brendan and he wraps up a knife and hides it away. Nick then returns to the spot where the gangster dropped off Joe, trying to gather his nerves and calm himself. Just then he sees Joe step outside to throw out trash and begins making his way over. Joe is shocked to see Nick and as he recognizes him, Nick attacks him and the two begin to struggle. Joe grabs Nick's knife, but Nick overpowers him and Joe ends up getting stabbed in the stomach, passing away soon after. Nick grabs the knife and rushes away from the scene. He hurriedly wipes his prints from the knife and throws it in a nearby river before heading home. Helen is shocked seeing him so roughed up, but Nick tells her that he slipped and fell. That night, Nick breaks down in the shower, apologizing to Helen for losing their son. We then see the gang leader Billy, dropping off money to a gang boss named Bones. He then goes to his gang's hideout where they break the news of Joe's death to him, which angers him. Billy and his boys are planning to take revenge and try figuring out who killed Joe. One member tells Billy that his sister saw a guy in a suit hanging around, and Billy concludes that it must have been Nick who took his revenge. Nick is at work when a detective comes by to tell him about Joe's death, feeling some sort of relief. Nick leaves work and is heading back home when Billy and his men begin trailing him. One man tries shooting him but Nick knocks him down. Billy and his gang then begin shooting at Nick, chasing him through back alleys until Nick manages to lose them inside a parkade. Completely out of breath, Nick climbs through the levels, causing the cars around him to alarm to distract the men. Nick runs to the top level of the parkade, but a gangster comes to the roof looking for him. Nick hides among the cars and when the man is distracted he attacks him. Nick disarms him then grabs a stick from his car, beating the man down. He quickly recovers and they begin fighting once more, ending up inside a car. The car goes into neutral and begins rolling backwards towards the edge, but Nick manages to kick the windows out and escape the car just before it crashes to the ground, killing the man. Nick hurriedly jumps in his car and makes his escape before Billy and the others can catch up to him. He stops alongside the road, freaking out. He gets a call from Helen saying she cannot find Lucas, but Nick has an idea of where he is. Nick finds Lucas at the gas station where his brother died, tormented by survivor's guilt and in tears, but Nick manages to take him back home to Helen. Meanwhile, Billy is going through Nick's wallet, seeing pictures of his family and planning to take his revenge on Nick. Nick is at work when Billy's goon Bodie enters the building holding a package. The security tries stopping him, but he gets into the elevator and gets to Nick's office, shouting for him. He hands Nick the package, telling him that he and his family are next before the guards drag him out. Nick opens the package to see his briefcase and pictures of his family. He sees a number on the back and calls, only to hear Billy on the other line. The boss warns that he is coming for Nick's family, as the man he killed was his brother. Nick grabs his things and gives Helen a call, telling her to stay inside, before calling the detective to report the threat. Nick gets home a little later, with cops posted outside his home. He rushes inside and ensures that the doors and windows are all closed, before the detective turns up. She reveals in front of Helen that Nick has started a war because of what he did to Billy, leaving Helen shocked. Nick does not confess but asks for her help, so she stations cops at his house for the night. Helen confronts Nick about his actions, but the loss of their son is all he could think about and he wanted his revenge. Helen reassures him that he is a good father and she will always love him. Later, Billy is awakened by the sound of a horn and looks outside only to see the two cops dead. Suddenly he is attacked by intruders who begin chasing and shooting at him. Nick runs to the bathroom, tripping one man before tackling the other over the railing. Two other men then drag Helen and Lucas downstairs where Billy and his men are waiting for them. Nick slowly recovers from his fall in time to see Billy shoot both Lucas and Helen, before getting shot himself. Nick wakes up disoriented in the hospital, screaming for his family before passing out again. He wakes up again to see the detective standing in his room. She warns him to stop this as his vengeance has gotten him nowhere. Nick thinks he has killed his family, but learns that Lucas is still barely alive. He rushes to the room to see his son in a coma and asks to spend some time with him. Nick apologizes for ever treating him differently from Brendan, and for not protecting him, but confirms that his son means the world to him. There is a sudden change in Nick and the detective rushes into the room to see Nick gone. Nick walks back home and gets a change in clothes. He calls a friend to run a trace on a number, before heading to the bank to withdraw all his money. Nick gets the location and heads over to a bar, beating the location of Billy out of the bartender. He then heads over to Billy's boss named Bones, wanting to buy guns and flashing his cash. Bones then reveals his gun collection and Nick buys them all. As he goes to leave, Bones confronts him about going after Billy, revealing that Billy is his son. Bones however does not care, and sends Nick on his way to get his vengeance. Nick gets home and gets himself acquainted with his guns before shaving his head bald. Nick then grabs his shotgun and heads over to the address of one of Billy's goons. He blasts his way inside, then holds the man at gunpoint, demanding to know where Billy is. Nick then orders him to give Billy a call. Once Billy answers, Nick then executes the man on the call. Bones then pulls up, confronting Billy about always getting in trouble, which causes trouble for him. Suddenly Billy shoots him dead and takes his car. Nick then heads over to Billy's hideout, bursting through the gates and crashing into a van, killing the gangster inside. Billy then staggers inside with his shotgun ready to begin his crusade. Nick begins blasting the armed men, chasing one man and blasting him through the window. The other men begin chasing after him, resulting in a chaotic shootout. Billy and Bodie turn up to join the hunt for Nick in the dark building. They lose Nick in the darkness and start creeping around for him. One man almost takes off his head, but Nick manages to blow him away. Nick heads to another room where Billy confronts him and the two shoot at each other with Nick blowing off Billy's fingers. Bodie shoots Nick in the neck, but he gets a headshot before Nick empties his mag on Billy. Nick staggers to a seat. Billy tries shooting at him but runs out of bullets, and they end up seated on the same bench dying. Billy tells Nick that he has turned him into one of them. Nick pulls out his revolver and asks Billy if he's ready to meet his maker, as Billy sheds a tear before Nick ends his life. Nick drives Billy's car back home and falls into the couch just as the cops pull up outside. He watches a video of his happy family when the detective tells him that Lucas will pull through. Relieved, Nick takes his last breath in the couch looking at his family. Remember to turn on notifications, so you can watch more movie recaps like this. Thanks for watching.